Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking time to participate in today's webcast, 5 Trends for the Financial Industry in a Business as Unusual Year. This is a GP Strategies sponsored webcast. We want to thank our sponsor. GP Strategies is a leading workforce transformation partner and dedicated global provider delivering custom learning solutions from the front line to the C-suite. As Joy mentioned, I'm Lisa Spinelli. I'm Senior Content Manager for ATD, and I'll be your moderator today. Don't forget, you can find more great content on our website at td.org. Just a quick housekeeping note, as Joy mentioned, if you have any if you have any questions, put them in the chat there at the right-hand corner of your screen, and we will save all of the questions for the end, unless it's pertaining to something immediate. So without further ado, I have the pleasure of introducing our presenter today, Dan Miller. Dan Miller joined GP Strategies in 1988 and is responsible for the organization's financial client solutions globally. His most recent experiences include working in London as the head of GP's operations in Europe and the executive leader for the largest global managed learning service contract at GP Strategies in the financial services industry. Prior to this, he led the expansion of GP Strategies in Asia, including the establishment of the company's operations in China and India. Dan holds a BS in Human Resources Management from the New School University, a Master's of Business Management from Anderson University, and executive certificates in international management from Thunderbird University. So thank you so much, Dan, for joining us here today. I will pass the mic over to you.
Thanks so much, Lisa, and thank you also, Joy, for setting everything up today and making this as easy as possible. I'd like to welcome everybody, of course, and I'm so happy to be here today to talk a little bit about the financial services industry and really some of the things that we're learning and seeing through the past year and how all of the disruption in the industry, in all of our industries, have really caused significant and impactful changes to the way learning and thinking and the way that we are reacting and organizing to meet the needs of our employees in the future. So we'll spend a little time today talking through a few things as we get started. And I'm going to shift mode here for a second. Apologize, everybody. We'll talk a little bit about modern learning in faculty communities, our culture of accessibility, learning in a new workflow, diversity and inclusion, of course. We'd like to give a little example of a case in point and talk a little bit about extended reality today. And of course, future skills, the topic that's at the top of everybody's mind, will be sprinkled throughout. As we are taking a look at where we're headed here over the next hour or so, I do encourage you to drop a note in the chat if you have a question. As Lisa mentioned, we'll be monitoring that, and we'll be happy to take questions at the end, or if there's something really relevant that you'd like to chat about immediately, we'll bring it to my attention. We'll try to raise it. So why don't we get started and talk a little bit about this idea of a faculty community. There's been a lot that happened in 2020 in terms of the way we deliver learning. And virtual instruction and in terms of our deployment of learning has become even more important. We've seen tremendous shifts, where the weight of what we delivered face-to-face live in the classroom as compared to virtual completely shifted ratios. What might have been 70-30 before is 25-80 now, or 20-80 now. So it's really caused us to take a look at how we do things and to make a focus on making sure we're doing things correctly. The approach that our clients have been taking is one that's been very interesting for us, because first there was a reaction stage where we saw, oh no, the world is really collapsing around us in terms of providing really powerful learning for our employees around the globe, or regionally or locally, not being able to have the classroom events that we've had that have always been so successful, bring great value to our learners. And And in reaction to that, I think most companies and probably most everybody that you work with pivoted and started to leverage virtual delivery. And we found that in that process, not everybody was ready. That our faculty were not prepared for a virtual platform. That the content itself was suitable 100% for classroom delivery, but not so much for the virtual environment, and that it required a lot of changes. We also discovered something else, that as we looked at our virtual workforce, the faculty being one of them, it started to become very important that we had to find ways to connect our faculty. I think most organizations, if you're managing deployment of large programs, are thinking about faculty development, how you prepare them, what qualifications they need to have, what certifications they need to have, how you would onboard them and make them familiar with your organization, and how you prepare them to do a really good job and how they network and perform. I know we always held networking events for our faculty in the past, where we would really have some conversations around what's going right, what are the things that we need to do better, how do you set up for the classrooms, what's the content that to be and really spending time to develop our faculty really in a virtual world. Um, and now in that virtual world, we had to take some further steps. So as an example, and we're seeing others embrace this as well, is to take modern learning and apply to your faculty and to your own organization. So that we actually started in 2018 and 2019. And the example that I'll have here is just one, and it's using the Fuse platform. What we decided to do is create a social collaboration site for our faculty, 10 to provide some connectivity for our faculty that were dispersed around regions of the world. So the first place that we worked with this was in Asia, because we had people who were in China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan, and we needed to find a way to first onboard them, source them, get them connected with each other. But we discovered pretty quickly how powerful a platform like this can be for developing our faculty for new emerging programs and in new disciplines. So this is one of the lessons that was learned by us and by our clients, because what we discovered is that through this process, our clients were happier. They had a better experience. A better experience in a virtual classroom, but also their employees really appreciated the efforts that went into making the event more impactful. The use of break rooms, the way that we manage the events, the use of producers, the things that we all want to do to make sure we have great events, great classes. So Fuse is a nice platform that you'll hear me talk about a couple platforms today. Um, this one now we've moved into Asia and to EMEA and to North America, around high use curriculum areas. And the feedback from our teams has just been fantastic, and from our clients. So just to give you a sense of that impact, we use Net Promoter Scores to measure what our customer satisfaction is, and we've seen our Net Promoter Scores raised by as much as 22% over the last year, based on the experience of the learners and of the organizations that we work with around the introduction of our social community for our faculty, and around the way we respond to COVID and to the move and rapid shift to virtual online learning. So food for thought, impact number one, and we are seeing that trend continue into 2021. In fact, what we now see is that organizations are asking for outside help, where they're saying, well, we want to deploy something. It's harder to reach a network of facilitators and develop them. How can we do that in this virtual world and continue to progress the programs that we have under development, whether in a new learner journey, or if it's a new leadership program or something to shift change around the organization. And we found that the platforms can be a very significant tool. So not limited to use. I've mentioned them because we've had some success there. But there's certainly some great learner experience platforms that can help in this regard. Shifting gears just a little bit. we're going to move to a culture of accessibility. This is another trend that is being very dominant in the world. And I think that a few years ago, uh, even go back a little bit further, 6 or 7 years ago, accessibility became important in some parts of the world and in some parts of the country, of the United States specifically. Still a lot of confusion around what that meant 7, 8 years ago, because it became a compliance to website standards. But today, we're getting a much better view of what accessibility means and how important it is. Because really a view that I take, I think most people should take, is that accessibility is directly tied to inclusion, right? You can't forget any employee when you're designing training, and you need to think about access and the ability to reach every person in a way that is meaningful. So when we think about accessibility, we have a few points that we like to put in front of you to consider. It's a design point, right? So when you're creating a learning journey, you should be thinking about accessibility as a designer. Um, not just the standards, not the requirements, if you will, of a specification, but really think about the learner and how accessibility can impact their journey, and consider every employee in a learner journey, because we're not all in the same situation, and it's easy to get into the mindset of group and everybody kind of works in a certain way. We're all sitting at our desks in an office, very comfortable in our chairs, having a spot of tea or a cup of coffee while we're working. We can have a casual environment, but it's not as easy for everybody else, right? So we need to make sure that we're thinking about the environment that people are working in, and that the environment isn't necessarily the environment that we have personally on a day-to-day basis. Uh, think about through your community, and it also is an area that is because the standards were not always clean inside of the learning industry. That meant that we had to go outside to understand, best way to approach this. And what I mean by that is to understand, what is it that's happening in other parts of accessibility outside of learning that we can bring into learning. And so innovation and research in this space is one where there's great opportunity, I think. We haven't gone as far as we can, but I think it is strong. One of those points that our clients are saying we need to incorporate in our values in a way that we approach learning. So that would be one of our points when we think about trend. It is really, it is a design point, right? So just, keep that and be mindful of that. And as I mentioned,
Dan, just wanted to
yes.
interrupt real quick. Sorry. If you could maybe turn off the video. It seems as though the audio is getting a little choppy, so wondering if maybe it's the bandwidth issue.
Okay. I'll go ahead and turn
Okay,
that off.
thank you.
Yep. And so, as I mentioned, as we step right into diversity and inclusion, that every organization today, obviously high in the news. I just moved back to the United States from the UK, and I'm certain everybody's been listening the last couple days to the interviews with Oprah Winfrey and Meghan Markle, and listening to what the Duchess has had to say around the things that are happening in the world, and the effect that diversity and inclusion can have on a family, can have on an organization like the royal family, and what it has in our workplace. It's again, this is one of those situations where our clients have put a lot of effort into really trying to drive for better diversity in our workforce, and better inclusion and better equity. But it has to be very thoughtful, and it can't be just that pitch. It's not a one-time event that all of a sudden things are going to be better, and we're going to have more diversity and inclusion in our workforce. It's more than hiring diversity. It's embracing diversity. And there'll be a couple times, when you think about points in life where you say, "Wow, I really learned something," and I'll give you one for myself. I received my MBA from Anderson University when I was in my 40s. And at that point in my career, I was feeling pretty set in terms of what I was doing, where I was headed. The degree itself was very helpful, obviously, right? You want to have the tool sets to do your job well. And I was more involved in management of an organization and needing to know financials and those types of things. But the real value that I had from that journey was being part of a cohort that was made up of about 20 people who went through the journey together as we completed our executive MBAs. And it was a very diverse group, people of color, women, men, young, older. And I think the greatest learning that I had through that process was that appreciation for other people's point of views. That there's everybody comes from a different place, and in order to understand people, you need to have an appreciation for who they are and where they come from. You can't be them, right? That's impossible. Even today, I try to remind myself if I'm talking to someone that I can talk about. Hey, I could say I've been there and understand where you are. But where I was when I was 40 compared to somebody else who's 40 today are two completely different places, even in the same situation. Whether it's cultural background, whether it's experiences, whether it's the opportunities that they've had in their lives, the situations are different. I'm mindful of that, and I think organizations need to be mindful of that in order to be more inclusive and diverse. So some of the finer points around diversity, equity, inclusion is that this requires change. I had something in my life that was very impactful. And it's not like I wasn't mindful of diversity, but it really did have an influence on me. It really affected me. So from a personal journey, being able to remember that other people are in different places, you have to help them. And as a learning organization, how do we do that? Because really, it's not just a skill set. It's not saying all of a sudden I need to hire more people that are of color, or I need to have somebody on my team that's a woman, or a woman needs to be a manager. It's really having a mindset about the way we work together. And so we need to consider how we change mindsets. It's not just skill sets, and shift the way that we provide access to learning. I thought one of the really cool things I saw at one of my customer sites probably 3 years ago. Worked with a gay woman who was on the client side, and she stepped up and really promoted inclusion, diversity inside of their organization. And you think about little moments in time. Little moment in time for that organization was that she did a video talking about pride and inside of the organization and in the world, because the company is one that reaches out into the community. Did a video, shared a little bit of personal experience, and that I recall walking into the lift one morning, looking up, and there's a little monitor playing on the screen, and there she is, talking about diversity and inclusion. Again, a very moment in time type of situation. People getting on a lift in the morning, hundreds of people, thousands of people going up and down that lift every day. Opportunity to reach people. It was a learning experience. Yes, it was part of a strategy to communicate and part of change management. But those are the types of things that you need to think about. How are the ways that we change the mindsets of people? How do we shift the way we provide access to those learning opportunities? The last part of this kind of goes back to my story earlier around mentoring and reimagined mentoring. When I went through that program with my cohort on my MBA class, the people that were in that room with me, we mentored each other. There were times people would come to me and say, "Hey, do you have an idea here?" And can you help me? In the other hand, I work with them and say, "How can you help me? I don't understand. Where are you coming from?" And that's very valuable in the way we envision mentoring today. Coaching clearly is a trend inside of learning today. It is something that's become more and more important. Mentoring carries that one step further, but reverse mentoring is as valuable as mentoring. So I personally try to make sure I work to mentor with some of my coworkers every year. And even if your organization doesn't have a formal mentoring program, look for it, seek it out. And if you have the opportunity to include mentoring as part of your learner journey, I'd highly recommend it. It's a really great way to do it. And the reverse mentoring and the mentoring inside your organization can help change the culture strategy and can help change mindsets from both the leadership perspective and from those being led. Again, for your consideration. Okay, so we talked a little bit about a couple of trends and what's happening in the workplace. But now let's shift gears and talk about learning in the flow of work. If you take those first couple of examples around accessibility, diversity, inclusion, and start thinking about how do you pull those into learning in the flow of work. This is now time to take advantage of all those new technologies that have been coming along that are enabling us to transform learning. Um, they don't do it by themselves. I mean, there's no magic formula that makes a Degreed or an EdCast or Intrepid or Fuse or any other platform make a great learning experience. It's a way that you as a learning professional leverage that platform. Um, the technology is infrastructure, right? So I know organizations that have acquired an LXP and 2 years later are still scratching their heads on how best to leverage it. And in this world, in our world, in the financial services world, insurance world, it can be even more challenging given the requirements around information security and technology infrastructure. But it can be done. And so the lesson that I would share is that I've seen organizations go on a path of selecting, implementing a learner experience platform, and they've succeeded, and I've seen others that have not succeeded. I think the journey has to be one where you're really thinking about, um, you know, who to partner with inside your organization, and to know that this is not a 3-month project. It's just not going to happen that way. It takes some investment and time to make those types of things happen. And we all know that, right? If we're talking about a learning course, we would want to build a program, build the course. We'd want to prepare our faculty. We'd want to ensure that we have it scheduled. We understand the demand for who's going to use it. We'll launch the program through a pilot. We'd have a facilitator that would be a master trainer. We would train other trainers. That doesn't happen itself in a period of just a couple or 3 months. It takes time and planning to make an event like that ready, or a course like that ready for a rollout. So when you think about creating learner journeys around a learner experience platform integrated to a portal with a learning management system, it's not something that's going to happen quickly. But we are seeing some great successes now, and it's taken a couple years to get to the point where we are today, where we can start really having successes, and we are seeing successes. So some of the things that we'd like to suggest is that you really do think about the future and facing the future, and use that little face as a means to remember. Focus on the learners, align to the business, create a learner experience, play back, and execute with an agile mindset. Um, the proof of some successes at the front end will carry you a long way. We ran and worked with a client around a CO program, leveraging an LXP with one of our clients. It was an early adoption to leverage their LXP. Um, really spent time developing it. They spent a significant amount of time. We came in to help with the design of the solution and to deploy it. And that execution meant so much because as we got to the final months of deployment, getting ready for it, we had to be able to make changes, adapt it, and that program, launched on a small scale, went to a larger scale, was very successful. What that did, though, even though it was important to have that program be successful, it was that building block to future programs. So now that client is building out a broader array of learner journeys and able to leverage the past win by pointing at it and saying, hey, listen, we're able to show you and demonstrate that we have success and there's some measurable results, right? So going back to the focus and the alignment, if you're thinking about focusing, or as you focus on the employees and you align with the business, you start to identify what's really important to the business, what's really important to the learning, and when you create that learner experience playbook, you'll have successes. So it is an investment. You need to move forward carefully. You want it to be sustainable because there will be some hiccups along the way. A little spilt milk, you wipe it up and move on. You want to be systematic about it. In the planning stage, obviously, we come from a world where risk is important to understand. Stepping back and understanding what the risk is, thinking about your alternative plans, in a methodical way is good, but you also think about it from an agile perspective, right? And the using of sprints and methodology that's most appropriate for your organization. Use the tools that your organization has today, um, because people understand the language, and it will help them to adapt to a new innovation. As an example of where we've seen some things that are really starting to be successful around the learner experience, one area that might be interesting to some of the folks on this call is around advanced credit and risk. This is a banking experience, and the idea around this was to create learner journeys that would be really much more beneficial to the employees, from the sense that it allows them to come into the process, opt out of things that are not mandatory, allows them to go down a path that's most suitable for them, and to leverage the points learning that will help them to meet the competencies and to develop the skills that. So this is a small example. In this case, was a recommendation around the degree platform, where we could create the learner journey using a number of different tools and methodologies, right? Whether it was Adobe PDF, or if it was BILT, or if it was an online learning program, coaching, mentoring, anything we really wanted to incorporate into it. So the approach is one where we have the opportunity to take a program that is generally those that people may not have always enjoyed in the past. It became is credit and risk can be obviously because of compliance around it, regulatory, it can be very dry topic, and can be perhaps a learning program that our employees don't look forward to. So through the redesign, what we look to do is incorporate a number of different types of pathways that would allow the employees to really have a great experience. So if they take a look at credit and risk, they can look at deal structure through e-learning. It takes them to a post or a VILT activity, VILT itself. We provide performance support through a number of different avenues, to include coaching, to include online learning, to include access to processes and procedures. So it's really an effective learning pathway that develops people and gives them what they need. The other beautiful part about it is, it's moment in time, right? So while there is a journey and there's a path that they need to complete within period, there that allows them to go into learning at the time that they can get into learning. It fits their schedules as much as anybody else's, and it provides them learning in a way that is that they'll be most receptive to, right? We've always talked about learners as adults, and how their experience, risk avoiders, resistance to change, they like involvement, and those sorts of things. You take that and you apply it to a world of digital. and the fact that so many of our employees today are coming from a world where they're tech savvy, they're using their mobile devices, they're ready to learn on any platform, and we're marrying the two, right? We're mindful that we don't step away from the learner and the importance of understanding where the learner is coming from, and that everybody doesn't learn the same way, but we're also acknowledging and taking advantage of the technologies that our employees are, really well suited to leverage in their learning journey. So, this learning pathway is just one of many. I'm sure that with you, your clients, your customers, your internal customers or external customers are looking to pass that, develop your employees using platforms and learner experience platforms. And the beauty of this is you can have a lot of content. You can use curated content with it. You can create bespoke content. And of course, the compliance requirements that you need to have can be built into it. And as you move on, because you are using things that are curated, you're able to shift out and change the content pretty flexibly. And of course, that requires a moderator and all those types of resources as well. So, thinking about the infrastructure that you put around it, will be important. But it's encouraging to see that as we've gotten into this year, I can really point at 5 or 6 organizations in minutes now that I know are working either in establishing programs along learning pathways using an LXP and beginning to have success, or are thinking about it. So, as you think about again learning, in the flow of work, where can we collaborate? There's more available workflow flow data. It's no longer the piece of paper that we develop for a learning program. It's the processes, it's the tools, it's the ability to mentor, to coach, to develop people. If you think about a role like a relationship manager, if you can effectively help a leader for relationship managers in coaching and team coaching, you affect learning. So all those things become important and integral to our learning solutions. We are seeing more introduction of automation and performance enablement, and certainly AI is weaving its way into what we do. As a trend, I can say that we're consistently, study-wise, ATD is seeing this as well, that AI and then some of the technologies behind it are starting to become more prevalent. I can think, today as an example, interesting little product that's out there that allows you to actually take a look at usage by learners to understand, which programs are most popular, who's coming back to them, helps you to make decisions around, which content to keep, which content to go. And it's doing that by tracking learner usage and experience, right? So it's almost like the combination of your YouTube stars on this is good or this is bad, but also tied to the usage of the materials and the um, the usage of the materials and the success of the learners in meeting the performance objectives of the material. So you start taking a look at all those things, and so there's some interesting new platforms and tools that are out there that can really provide insight to learning. I think all of that is really kind of, and everything I've been talking about, whether it was some of the platforms I mentioned earlier or the faculty community, is pointing out that in the learning world, while there are large transformation organizations like the one I work for, GP Strategies, there are boutique organizations and associates around the world that make us a much better provider. The reality is, if we go into some of the domains of the platforms, we're going to find that for a certain situation, whether it be a learner experience platform or an LMS, your organization's needs will be met for the LMS perspective from a some total workday, Saba, whatever it might be, and from a learner experience platform, you may be down the Edcast or the Agreed platform, or from a MOOC perspective, an Intrepid. So regardless of what they are, those can all work. And so being open to a variety of platforms and trying to understand what fits your organization best is a consideration that everybody should have. Okay, so really only one more techie piece that I wanted to speak to, and that's around refining and expanding augmented reality and some of the tech that's happening out there today. And we're beginning to see blended and augmented virtual realities become a real part of what we do in learning. I'm guessing that given the types of folks that are on this call, you may have seen, an announcement a week or so ago uh, that Bank of America was investing in virtual reality at their retail branches. And it's really interesting to see that, because there's in their press release, so it's public information. They speak about cyber and the intent to roll out training to the retail branches around a number of different areas around teller and teller support training. But outside of the tellers, I won't say that it would necessarily be exclusive to it. And I think that it's really exciting from the perspective to look at virtual reality inside of retail for finance and insurance, because I think that there's been some time that we've been stepping back and saying, okay, what makes sense here, right? Some of the earliest views that I had were from a company called Immerse, and where they're looking at how can you maintain a cash machine, ATM, and what could you do virtually to help those employees who develop around maintenance, security, safety, handling, all those areas, right? And similarly, when we take a look at things like cyber, they have IP that is very interesting. If you read the article carefully, you'll notice that they talk about a pilot, and what that means is obviously that they've gone through that pilot stage, so they obviously been working on this for a bit, and then plan to deploy it to potentially down the road 50,000 employees. Now, that's a quote from an article, right? So it's not necessarily in concrete yet, probably in sand somewhere. That there's a goal of vision of reaching that. And so, I think that's great to see that the concept of virtual reality is beginning to grow into the learning world. And it's one of those things that we've known is coming for a while, and that we've been hopeful that it'll become bigger in what we do. So for us, what we do here at GP is we have a discovery sandbox. And so we're playing around in a couple different things. And specifically, when I say discovery, I do mean discovery and onboarding and bringing new people on board. So you think about tools that you might have out there for a retail branch associate that you can leverage from a partner, how you can blend that with learning to create a learner journey. And what could you do to your discovery or your onboarding program to make it more effective? So the challenges that our clients have is one where, onboarding journeys take time, and onboarding journeys aren't all virtual. And you think about a retail branch, there's many challenges that you have to deal with in order to get in front of what the needs are to onboard employees quickly and to create an effective journey. So again, considering the learner experiences and what you can do, you can just imagine that we may have the opportunity here over the next years to incorporate augmented reality, virtual reality in our retail journey, But more importantly, today, we're already seeing this trend where we're challenged to make onboarding and discovery faster, more effective, and do it in a way that develops employees not only for that retail job, but positions them for future skills. We know that the job in a retail branches are not the same any longer. If you walk into a retail branch, well, heck, my retail branch is on my phone. I do most of my bank at mobile, through a mobile device. When I am in a retail branch, the experience I have is different than it was 10 years ago. And because of that, we know that what retail branch employees, the traditional teller, is no longer the traditional teller. We know that a relationship manager, whether it's in retail banking or commercial banking, or in insurance or as an underwriter, is different than it was 10 years ago. Our world has become virtual, so has theirs, and probably tenfold, because of the realities of the way that fintech and digital has entered banking, and how it has entered the insurance industry, and what we need to do. So our sandbox is one where we're looking at the onboarding journey. What can we do pre-boarding? What's that experience that we can give employees that really pull them into the organization, get them excited, get them to start to know who they're going to work for and what the branch experience might be before they ever step in. And then, taking a look at a phased approach to developing the employees that's much faster and really drives towards a Thrive experience, right? A personalized onboarding experience that's tailored to the learner's pace, but also to your aspirations. Um, Again, built around a learner experience platform. And what we're starting to see is some, very, taking a look at where we are today, and this is through some internal studies, taking a look at current states and retail branches and where we want to be. There's some great opportunities for improving the effectiveness, timing, impact, and cost of onboarding for banks. So I think that we'll continue to see this trend, no doubt about it. Financial services, has to deal with clients in a completely different way. Our customers expect a different experience, and we need to be able to have our employees prepared to deliver that experience. There's a nice little thought here at the bottom. In a quote, it says, "A learner cannot remember everything they have been taught before doing their job. As trainers, we don't have enough time to do what we want." So that quote is coming from retail trainers, and it's just, okay, somebody arrives at the job, they just can't remember everything. We don't have time to serve them. So what can we do to make it not only a journey of here's your onboarding training, here start your job, here go to work, but giving them, again, those moments in time that allow them to develop at their pace and to reinforce the learning, that it's not just once and done. So job aids, performance support, all become very integral to the learning experience. So the last little bits that we're going to talk about are future skills. A lot of, obviously, thought in this area. One of my co-workers, Keith Keating, has had a couple sessions on this through ATD around future skills, and we've seen the reality of the skills that we need to develop, the mindsets that we need to develop in order to be successful as employees. And that can go back to diversity, inclusion, and equity, accessibility. It can go right back to this moment before around discovery and onboarding, where we think about what skills our employees need to have to be successful. It goes back to the last few years where we've worked to develop technical skills for employees, whether it be a COO that needs to be as much CIO as COO these days, or if it's somebody in a branch that needs to have good technical skills, and understand the basics of websites and online communications and chatting in order to work with their clients. So future skills, certainly has come up to the forefront over the last couple of years, and I'm seeing a continued trend here. In the sense that financial institutions still put future skills up forward, and I think we will for a while. And if anything has been learned in 2020, um, resilience has got to be at the top of our list. Uh, you know, we are speaking as in my American seat now, that we're resilient people. But I think that's also true of people in Britain that I worked with, the people in Asia and China and Hong Kong and India. And that resilience is something that we absolutely need to continue to build and build upon. Because this obviously worldwide event, a pandemic, something that we all need to be resilient and bounce back from. But there's a thousand other things that we need to be resilient around, right? It's going to be a digital transformation that will continue. It's going to be a shift in how we buy. It's going to be new retail banking structures. There are parts of organizations that are looking at divestiture, and saying, well, maybe we don't want to be in this part of the business any longer. Maybe we need to invest more in another bit. Commercial banking is where we need to be. Retail banking is not our strength. We need to move our strength to where our strength is. Wealth management is where we belong. So as an organization that's going to go through change, it's going to be important for us to help our employees with resilience. Understand that as we talked earlier, they're going through a tremendous amount of change right now, and having empathy towards our employees and towards each other, understanding where people are coming from, and to help them grow that learning agility. You can't train everything. What you can do is help people with their mindsets. So I can present a program around learning agility 1,000 times, but if you don't embrace it, if you're not in a mindset that allows you to take advantage of the learning that we present, then we're not successful. So part of our challenge and part of financial services challenge is to create that mindset over the next few years, and how we're going to develop our employees and how we're going to develop ourselves. So we're right in the middle of it. So focus on those mindsets, the skills, the abilities, and approach what we do as a learning professional in an open, emphatic environment, right? We want to leverage our emotional intelligence, and it's always our goal. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I've been in the learning business, in the learning world, for well over 30 years, and I love it. I mean, this has been a great career, and I think that we're at a wonderful point. Coming out of this pandemic, we're going to have a better year, all of us, over the next year. I'm optimistic. If you saw my personality scores, I'm one of those guys that's just off the charts optimist. But I think we have a reason to feel optimistic right now, and I think that we need to walk in with our eyes open to the next year, think about these trends and what we're seeing, and apply some of the practices that we're telling our learners they need, our organizations are saying they need, to ourselves, and to keep them in our forefront while we're developing learning. This is entirely a world that's continuing to be volatile, right? That's the VUCA world. Traditional Agile continues, and for us as learning professionals, for everybody on this call, that my advice to you after 30 years of being in this business is be resilient. Uh, think about what we want to do for our employees, how we can help our organizations. We impact people's lives, right? We can make a change in a person's life every day that we deliver and design a training program. Every time we put it out there for somebody, it's more than a score. It's more than a smile sheet. It's somebody's life. we're in a great spot in the world to be able to influence that. So I encourage you to think about that. That as we move forward in this year, 2022, 23, 24, 25, your entire careers, the future's it's ongoing. It's not written. The future's not written. We're writing it, and you have an opportunity to influence the future and to make an impact on learning. So what I'd like to do now is just pause at this point and see if we have any questions. I'm happy to answer anything that might be on your mind. I'll just reach back over to Lisa to see if there's any questions out there.
Thank you so much, Dan. Here we had a couple questions. One is about getting buy-in from leaders along the lines of the mentoring you were talking about earlier. How do you include leaders? How do you gain that buy-in from them that this is a kind of culture and necessary aspect?
Yeah. It's almost one of those things where I hope that we can say someday that leaders understand that it's important to mentor and to coach. Um, I think for us, one of the things that we need to be able to do is show the value of mentoring. And there's some studies that are out there and available. I've been trying to remember the gentleman's name out of New York. Actually, he's out of London, but had done some very successful reverse mentoring programs inside of Unilever. But the best way to do it is, I think, to first you have to be at the table, right? So learning has to be at the table, but you have to be able to show evidence that mentoring can be successful in an organization. For me, it's one of sharing my personal experience and to see where others have been successful. So that would be my recommendation.
Great, thank you. How do you align some of these aspects you've gone over around the coaching culture with business missions and goals?
Yeah, that's great question. So if you take a look at your mission and goals of an organization, and you think about how coaching can impact that. Um, from the learner experience, let's pick a role. We'll say a relationship manager, and you take a look at relationship managers that are really successful at their jobs, and you profile them. If you take time to do that profile, you're going to find that the most successful relationship managers have certain attributes. So the question then becomes, well, how do we get those attributes over to them? How do we make all these relationship managers embrace some of the behaviors and apply some of the learnings that will make them successful? They've all been to the same training. They're all exposed to the same compliance and risk. They have the same job responsibilities. But if you can find people that are really great at their jobs and you can help them to become coaches to coach others, you can have some great successes. And we've seen examples where we've taken leaders of relationship managers, put them in a situation where they start to coach their teams. So we're preparing them to be coaches. And the impact has been to see the pipelines of their relationship managers grow significantly. I can't share the information, but grow significantly based on the new role that the leaders have taken as a coach. And we've had similar results where we've worked with CEOs in some of our client worlds where we developed the CEOs to become coaches, and coaching I will say is really just one step away from mentoring, right? So if you're coaching, mentoring is a very easy leap to make. I think that there's some great examples of where you can do that. Again, step back to don't just walk in and say we should go coach, but what is the impact you can have on your organization? And look, we know that we can perform. We can have relationship managers that can have a better pipeline if we coach them in a certain way, and we can help coach them in a certain way if we prepare our coaches to develop the right skills for our teams.
Great points. Thank you. And as far as virtual onboarding goes, you kind of talked a little bit about the journey and the differences of the more in-person and virtual, but how do you kind of keep that personalization going when it is virtual and you lose that face-to-face?
Yeah, well, you don't have to lose it. That would be my challenge. So I'm going to go back to our faculty community, right? So even though we have a faculty community and we onboard initially through our Fuse tool or through the platform, some of the onboarding training that to take, they link to it. They'll go through their onboarding process, but they're still connected to this community. And so through the community, you're continuing to receive updates, posts, uploads, notes from managers about what's going on. So we don't shut down that community, right? It continues beyond the onboarding process, so that they're still connected to the rest of the world. It's not just an onboarding process. It's a learner experience that is a journey, and the journey isn't for 2 months and then they're onboarded and working in a retail branch. The journey is a career journey.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think that's about all the questions we had today. If anybody else has any questions they would like to ask Dan, please put them into the chat and we will get to them now. And if not, I will say thank you so very much to everyone who has come to join us, and thank you to Dan. Thank you to our sponsor, GP Strategies, and all the attendees.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. And it was nice to meet you. And I hope to hear some questions down the road from you, even after our event today. And thank you again very much to everybody at ATD for hosting and setting up some time for all of us to chat a little bit about future trends.